Okay, I'm Louise Bennett and I work for the BCS, the Chartered Institute of IT, and I chair their security and identity assurance panels. I think the real problems for identity and payment standards on the internet is an understanding of different national legal and cultural views, particularly those associated with liability, with security, privacy, and anonymity, and as far as the police is concerned, traceability of individuals making payments. I think that payment standards need to start from a point of simplicity. If you try and design complex systems right in from the start, they're not going to work. If we take the most simple payment system, which is currency, that has some problems with it. Someone may give you some counterfeit money. However, it doesn't happen very often and you're not looking for it all the time. And if you were a shop and you, say, put up a system where you checked for every possible bit of counterfeit money, you'd soon lose all your customers. For two reasons. You'd lose all their trust and it would be not a good shopping experience as far as they're concerned. So people don't do that. They accept that every now and again there'll be some counterfeit money. And the same is true on the internet. You've got to accept that there may be problems, make a simple system that works, and then if there are major problems, add security in to deal with those. I think that what you need to think about is, as I say, you need to accept that there will be things that go wrong. But if you take, say, three sort of levels of transaction, and for simplicity's sake, I'm going to call them high, medium and low. And I think in each of those, you have a slightly different situation. In a high level transaction, by which I'd mean something like an individual buying a car or a house, or a business buying all its stock for Christmas or something like that, that is a transaction where the individual is not prepared to accept very much risk. Because if they did, they could go bankrupt and it could have really serious consequences for them. So in that situation, they're going to require a lot of assurance about the identity of the people and the security of the payment. And typically now in a Western country like our own, they'll go to lawyers, they'll go to banks, they'll use trusted third parties in some way in those transactions. But in the heart of that transaction, there's already a very secure electronic transaction. And again, in this country, in UK, it will usually be a BACS transaction between the payers and the buyers' bank accounts. And everyone feels confident about that, and that works. If you take a medium level transaction, and by that I'd mean buying clothes, electronic goods or an airfare online, people who are a bit concerned about that transaction and the payment and the identity and whether they'll get paid will tend to use a credit card. And they'll use a credit card because the credit card accepts some of the liability for them. As a purchaser, I know that if I bought something with a credit card, even though I may be charged another £2.50 for doing it, I've bought peace of mind, because if something goes wrong with the transaction, then I'll have redress. The credit card company will refund my money. And the credit card company is protected because in their charges, they've charged enough to cover the cost of the transactions that go wrong. And simplicity has been sort of added to with extra security, because if their charges and the charges customers are prepared to pay for credit cards don't match up, they will add extra security into it. Like, for instance, they will give a person a device to use when using their credit card online that will ensure that there's an encrypted transaction. And again, we see the transaction gets slightly more complicated when extra security is needed to buy a level that is acceptable. I think the area where there are real problems is the low-level transactions. And say online I decided to buy some cosmetics because I thought they'd make me look nicer or smell nicer or feel nicer or something. And I don't pay much attention to the terms and conditions. Maybe I'll find that this transaction isn't a good one online. Maybe the things that arrive will be substandard, but I won't have paid any attention to the T's and C's because I didn't really care about it, and I won't have realised there was a no refund policy. Maybe they won't arrive at all because I thought I was going to a high street shop, and by mistake I've gone to a similar looking site in some other country that isn't going to send me the goods at all. Now that may either make me be more careful next time about my electronic transaction, or it may make me lose trust completely in the identity of other parties on the internet and stop internet shopping altogether because I've been conned by a fraudulent identity. I think that one of the things that's really important is that as far as payments are concerned, you do need to accept that you can't have anonymity in payments. I don't think they're compatible. And I think everyone should start from the point of view that you need to have an identity, identity of a business, identity of an individual, if you're going to make a transaction involving a payment. And I think that's really important. I don't think privacy should be the driving thing for identity associated with payments on the internet. I don't think you can ever be 100% sure. I think you have to accept that every now and again things are going to go wrong as they do in the physical world. I think you have to be sure enough, given the risk you're prepared to take in the transaction that you're undertaking. As I've already said in talking about high-level transactions, I think most people are happy about that and prepared to go through quite a lot of security checks to make sure a really expensive transaction works. I think for medium-level transactions and transactions between businesses and consumers, if the business is legitimate, that business will try and make it usable for the consumer, not too onerous, and they will accept a certain level of failure in those transactions, and that will be built into their prices. I think where it becomes really difficult is in peer-to-peer transactions or transactions between very small businesses, home businesses and individuals, because of the difficulty of understanding those. And I think it's these peer-to-peer transactions where we really need to focus our attention on identity standards on the internet and payment standards, because that's where the problems are going to occur, and that's where you've got to find a simple, usable solution. In some places, you already have it because you have, say, Alipay stands in escrow in the Alibaba transactions, so that they hold the goods and the money, and then they make sure that they go to the right parties. In a sense, we do that with credit cards, you do that with PayPal. But with peer-to-peer transactions between, say, me and you, that's going to be a really difficult thing to do. And I think that's where we need to focus our attention.